All right, let's get right into it. We are absolutely swimming in information these days, right? But it turns out our brains are paying a pretty steep price for all of it, a hidden cost that we usually don't notice until we're feeling totally fried.
I mean, you've felt this before, haven't you? You spend a whole day just thinking, meetings, emails, trying to focus on a tough problem. And by the end of it, you feel physically wiped out, even though you barely move from your chair. So what is actually going on in there? Well, it turns out that exhausted feeling, it's not just in your head. It is a real, measurable, physical event happening inside your brain. So in this explainer, we're going to put on our detective hats and really investigate the science behind this mental burnout. To really get to the bottom of this, we're going to frame this whole thing like a detective story. Let's call our first file, The Case of Burnout. So, where does any good investigation begin? At the source of the problem. And in our case, it's this fundamental clash between our ancient analog brain and our crazy, high-speed digital world. You could call it our analog brain's glitch. The big scientific idea behind all of this is something called evolutionary mismatch. And it's actually pretty simple. It just means that the very same traits that kept our ancestors alive for thousands of years can suddenly become a huge disadvantage when our world changes way faster than our biology can keep up.
And this timeline just lays it all out, doesn't it? For pretty much all of human history, our brains evolved in a world where information was rare. So anything new, a strange sound, a new plant, was a huge deal. Novelty meant survival. Now jump to today. That exact same novelty bias is being hijacked by a constant fire hose of notifications, pings, and alerts. To your ancient brain, a Twitter notification can feel as urgent as a tiger in the bushes. It just can't tell the difference.
So, what does this battle actually look like inside our skulls? Well, a really good way to think about it is as a constant fight between a gas pedal that's stuck to the floor and a set of brakes that are getting worn down to the metal.
So on one side, you've got your dopamine system. That's the gas pedal. It's the part of your brain that's always seeking, always curious, always wanting more information. And the key thing is, it has no natural off switch. But on the other side, you've got your prefrontal cortex. These are the brakes. This is the brain's CEO, the part that's trying to keep you focused and on task. But here's the catch. Unlike the gas pedal, it has a super limited battery pack. It creates this huge bottleneck.
And this quote just nails it. Our brains are literally hardwired to want more information than they have the energy to deal with. You could say it's the core neurobiological crisis of living in the 21st century. Okay, so this brings us to the climax of our investigation. What's the physical proof of this overload? What are these metaphorical exhaust fumes coming out of our brain? For a long time, scientists were totally stumped by this. They knew that thinking hard was exhausting, but they couldn't figure out why. I mean, the brain's total energy use doesn't really change much whether you're solving calculus or just chilling out. So what was the deal?
Well, a really groundbreaking study from the Paris Brain Institute asked this exact question. What if you could actually watch the garbage, the metabolic byproducts of thinking, build up in real time, like seeing smoke pour out of an overworked engine?
And that's exactly what they did. This chart right here, this is the smoking gun. They had two groups of people work for 6 hours. The group doing the really hard mental tasks showed a big spike in a chemical called glutamate. And look at this, it only happened in the prefrontal cortex, the brain's CEO. And the result? Their decision-making got worse. They started choosing easier, more impulsive rewards. Their brain was literally too tired to think straight.
And we're not talking about a tiny little change here. The researchers measured about a 10% increase in glutamate just in that one part of the brain. In the world of neurochemistry, that is a really significant change.
So here's the bottom line. Glutamate is basically the brain's main gas pedal chemical. It makes neurons fire. But too much of it floating around is actually toxic. So that feeling of being completely mentally drained, that is your brain slamming on the safety brakes. It's a defense mechanism to stop you from literally thinking yourself into brain damage. Fatigue isn't a moral failing. It's a safety feature.
So while our attention system is getting totally overloaded, what's happening with our memory? Is it just breaking? Well, not exactly. It's doing something much smarter. It's adapting by offloading the work.
And this clever adaptation has a name. It's called transactive memory. So instead of wasting precious energy remembering raw information, our brain is getting really good at remembering something else, where to find the information. It's like prioritizing knowing the right Google search over knowing the actual answer.
Think about it this way.
The old model of memory was like an archive, designed to store the actual books. The new model is more like a card catalog, or an index. It doesn't store the book, it just stores the location of the book. So your brain isn't focused on remembering that an ostrich's eye is bigger than its brain, it just remembers that you can find that fact in about 2 seconds. This isn't your memory failing, it's your memory getting efficient.
And there's some cool data to back this up. In a famous study, researchers had one group of people type facts into a computer telling them the info would be erased. Another group was told it would be saved. And look at the results. The group that thought the information would disappear had way better recall. Our brains are actively choosing to forget things they know they can just look up again.
Okay, so knowing all this about the glutamate buildup and the memory offloading, what can we actually do about it? How can we give our poor, overworked brains a break? Well, let's talk about how to reboot your attention.
The science behind this is so cool. It's called attention restoration theory. And it basically says that being in nature helps our brains recover because it engages something called soft fascination. You know, watching leaves rustle or water flow doesn't take any hard mental effort. And that allows our prefrontal cortex, that overworked CEO, to finally take a break and recharge.
And the proof is in the pudding. A study from the University of Michigan had people take a test, then go for a 50-minute walk. The group that walked in a nature park saw their memory and attention scores improve dramatically. But the group that walked down a busy city street, almost no change. Because the urban environment demands that same kind of focused attention that tired them out in the first place.
And beyond just taking a walk, we can actually change our digital environment. Here are 2 super simple but really powerful tricks. First, try putting your phone in grayscale. Seriously, it strips away all those bright, colorful icons that are designed to hijack your dopamine system, and it makes your phone way less addictive. Second, batch your notifications. Instead of that constant drip, drip, drip of interruptions, just check them 2 or 3 times a day. It cuts way down on the huge mental cost of constantly switching gears.
So here it is, the final takeaway. That feeling of burnout is not a personal failure. It is the physical sign of metabolic waste building up in a brain that is simply working too hard. Your brain isn't breaking. It's doing its best to adapt to an insane new world. So now that you know the science, the real question is, are you actually giving it the chance it needs to recover?